How we looking, Vanessa? We got us on, let me know, let me know when we got us live on Facebook too.
We are live now.
All right, very good. So hi, Facebook land. This is Roz McCarthy. I'm here with Antoine Hines, our state director for Virginia, M4MM chapter. We are here hosting our Southern Virginia community meet and greet. I'm so happy to be with everyone this evening. And man, let's get started, man. Antoine, how you doing, brother? You're on mute.
I was on mute. Oh, the Zoom world nowadays. You got to remember to get yourself off mute, get yourself ready, make sure everything is good to go.
Exactly.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes.
How are you doing tonight? How's things going for
doing
you?
Fine. So definitely, it's been a whirlwind of a few weeks, months right now after you asking me to be the state director. You know, and saying like, okay, I really don't know a lot, but definitely I'm about project management. I'm about the military. I'm about strategic planning. I'm about helping people. I know different military people who have taken their own lives because of the pain. And I know medical marijuana has been a savior for them. And when I took this on that day and started putting it out there, people would inbox me saying, it saved my life. Definitely, I want to know how to get involved. Can you tell me this and tell me that and tell me that? I said, I don't know all that. But I know people, and I'm getting to know people who know all that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, for all those who are new to M4MM, M4MM is a Minorities for Medical Marijuana, is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're based out of Orlando, Florida, where our corporate office is. Antoine Hines is our Virginia State Director. All of you guys that are here, you know, this is our guy who's going to be leading the charge. We are all about making sure that communities of color have access to the plant. Then we also have an economic opportunity. We want to be able to participate from an economic perspective. There's room, it is a growing, budding industry, and it's important for us to be a part of that conversation as well. And then from a social justice, again, we are looking at individuals who have been incarcerated, who have records that we want to see their records cleared. We want to make sure that the plant is decriminalized. We want to make sure that individuals have an opportunity to repair their life after having gone to jail over this plant. So it's critical. And last but not least, we are also focused on public policy. If we don't write good policy and working with our legislators and our local government to make sure that this is a diverse and inclusive industry, the things that we want to see on the back end won't happen. And so you have to develop relationships, write good policy, advocate for it. And tonight is all about just being able to connect us as a community. It's a meet and greet. And so we have some special guests for tonight. And Antoine, if you're ready, let's get started, right?
I'm ready. And if people are on here who know me through social media, y'all know I'm always ready. And so I'm ready to rock and roll. I love information. You know, I love education. I love it all. And I love helping people. So definitely, I want to welcome everyone to this first meet and greet. Definitely, we have some special guests that I have been watching and I have awesome conversations with and know they are they the bomb. That's all I can say. And so from Roz that you just heard from the CEO of M4MM, Minorities for Medical Marijuana, I've been following her now and all the pieces and parts she does across the U.S. To help out with medical marijuana, cannabis, hemp, and just training and education. She's been the bomb. So we got Jim Michelle with Virginia Normal. We got Nagis Abib from Columbia Care. We're gonna have some other guests later on. We have several of the chambers. We have several chambers that's gonna come in and tell us about their chambers of commerce. But definitely, we're looking for any businesses, anyone out there that's interested in getting your cards and interested in getting information, supporting the goal and the lead and the priorities that we have for M4MM, as well as where Columbia Care with the dispensaries and Virginia Normal definitely is jumping on board. So I want to welcome you all, welcome all our guests, welcome all our business chambers to this first meet and greet. Definitely we'll have, this is for the Southern Virginia, we'll have one for the Northern Virginia. And you know, when we start doing that one, we already started today for that next one. So I'm on the ball. So we're working it. So definitely I'm the host today and Roz is gonna be the moderator. So we're gonna go through and really discuss from where the state of Virginia is at, meaning the actual laws, the bills, where we're at and what we got passed and what things we can do. And then we want to look at where we're at with the dispensaries across the state of Virginia and where the next one is coming. We got a special guest telling us the next one right here coming out of Portsmouth, but serving all our Hampton roads and those areas. Then we want to even talk about M4MM, where they're going across the U.S. and the next steps and what they're doing too. And then we're looking at what is M4MM, medical marijuana, hemp industry, as well as the cannabis industry. How can we get involved? How can we be a part of it? How can we lead the charge? How can we say social equity for Black and brown people is there, and we have access, we have the information, and it's not held away from us, and we don't have the barriers that we've had in numerous other arenas. That's what we want to learn tonight, and that's what's we're going to keep on going. And definitely we want to have those special guests come on and motivate us to go to the next level and go to the next steps and give you checkpoints for what we can do later on coming forward. And so definitely I'm gonna pass this on to Faraz. I don't know, did I pass it on? I don't know.
All right, got it covered. All right, I got you covered. So Vanessa, if you can share our agenda, and we're gonna start with our first young lady we're gonna introduce is Jen Michelle. Jen Michelle is with, I just found out that she's a Floridian, and we actually, we were close to each other in regards to areas we lived in. So happy to connect there. I'm based in Florida as well. So we're gonna have Jen speak a little bit. Introduce yourself, Jen. Talk a little bit about who you are, what you do, and just the current status of the medical program in Virginia. That'll be a great kind of foundation starting point to get everybody going. So welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me tonight, Roz and Antoine. Thanks for looping Virginia Normal into this conversation. So Virginia Normal is the state chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, Normal, of which I'm the development director. Normal started way back in 1970, and we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, working to reform marijuana laws. And we do that at the state, at the local, and at the federal level. And so here in Virginia, we've been really making some progress lately. In 2015 was really the first time that we saw any true measure of marijuana law reform pass in honestly decades in the Commonwealth. And that's where we got a foothold on our medical cannabis program. And if you want to just kind of fast forward from 2015 to 2020, this year, we saw not only our medical cannabis program open its first dispensaries, but it became explicitly legal under state law to participate in the medical cannabis program. We also decriminalized personal possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana. Both of these laws took effect on July 1, so a pretty huge day for Virginia this year. We took it a little further in special session, and on March 1st of next year, it will be prohibited for law enforcement to stop, search, or seize a person, place, or thing based solely on the odor of marijuana. Was another big victory for us during the special session after the full legislative session that happened earlier in the year. And I'm sure everyone has heard that Governor Northam has thrown the full weight of his support behind our efforts to legalize and regulate the responsible use of marijuana by adults during the 2021 General Assembly. This isn't happening by accident. This is happening because we are approaching these policy changes in a very prescribed manner that, frankly, is how we change laws here in Virginia. So treating this issue just as we would treat any other issue, and really working the system to make it work for us. And so we had the marijuana legalization study conducted by JLARC, and we said, you know what, let's maybe belt and suspenders this. Let's also have a work group convened. And so these reports are coming out right on top of each other, and this is what gave the governor that sort of backup to say, yes, I'm ready to move forward with legalizing cannabis in the Commonwealth. And so here we are. just a few weeks before we really need to have our eyes on the prize in the 2021 General Assembly.
Awesome, awesome. We're going to come back, Jen, and we're going to ask you some questions because we would love to get your position and Normal's position on the current, the makeup of the state and how the doling of licenses and access for patients and just the interaction of physicians with patients. I think that's really critical. I think 2021 gives us an opportunity to enhance what we currently already have as law on the books for the medical program. I think you guys said it really great today of saying, when you have trains that take off, they don't take off back to back to back. There is some type of space given to allow one to get to one destination and then the next gets to the next destination and given some space. And so I really want to get back on that point. So our next guest that we have today, and we have Miss Najis. And Najis, I don't have your last name, but please, and make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly, but please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're located, and what you currently do in the space, and and how you got into the cannabis industry.
Sure. Thanks for that, Roz. And just again, want to thank M4MM for coming to Virginia because I am the Director of Public Policy for Columbia Care. My name is Nigist. It rhymes with biggest, a baby. And so oh, don't worry about it. So I live in Richmond. I'm based out of Richmond. I cover multiple states, and I focus on, so I cover Virginia, DC, New York, Illinois, and California are the states that I manage kind of our government relations for. And then I do a lot of policy work on things ranging from trying to develop proposals for pilot programs to provide insurance reimbursement for medical cannabis, and as well as social equity programs and the transition from medical to adult use, and how do we learn from other states and folks who have done this before to make sure that we protect the medical program and also address adult use, because equity runs through all of this. And I think one of the foundational things for anybody who's working in cannabis policy is that the root of cannabis prohibition is fundamentally in racism. We know it because we have the quotes and we have all that. And we also have the science and research to know that this drug has never been as dangerous as people have tried to make it out to be. So coming from that position, I have kind of an unconventional path into cannabis policy personally, because I have done some research about a decade ago while I was in grad school, but I worked in the federal government and international affairs and had a security clearance and wasn't going to risk it for anything. And so I've always been pro legalization, but, was working in other spaces. And then I have a lot of family who lives in California, and my mom and I share the same kind of anxiety related insomnia problems. And about 2 years, almost 2 years exactly, I was home in San Diego. My mom was like, "Do you want to come with me to my dispensary?" I was like, "What in the world is happening? Like, I am a grown woman and my mom is taking me to go buy weed." But I went and I had my first edible that night, and I had the best sleep of my life. I had been managing that with melatonin, but it had, and then Z-Quil and anything I could do over the counter. Was never like worried enough to try to do anything prescription. And when I realized just like how profound that rest could be, I was like, I cannot believe that people are still in jail for this. And that juxtaposition too, if any of you have been to a legal state, it is weird to go experience a normal commercial transaction at the same time that that people are still in jail for the same activity. And I think that was part of how I ended up connecting with Jen Michelle and working with them to join the board of Virginia Normal. And one thing led to another. I went from working in Virginia politics to working as director of public policy with Columbia Care. And I raise all that because for me, equity, again, just runs through everything. There's health equity, and this medicine is incredibly expensive to access. It is not covered by insurance. There is still a cultural stigma around talking to your provider. Not all doctors understand that cannabis is medicine. That can make it hard for folks to receive the medical care that they need and deserve, because we know that it can really help and transform people's lives. Then there's the obvious injustices in criminal justice reform around decarceration of folks who have, any arrests, expungement, which is absolutely vital. And I'm really pleased to say, because of the work that Jen Michelle had done, and I want to give a major shout out to Senators McClellan and Evan and Herring for the work that they did during session, and Delegate Heretic down in Hampton Roads, among many, many others. That is by no means an exhaustive list for the work that they did to really, I mean, we have literally 3 reports on cannabis coming out within 2 weeks. And
wow.
This is a really profound moment because it takes a lot to change Virginia policy. Now, coming away from the policy side to the business side, Columbia Care is the medical cannabis dispensary location for the Hampton Roads region. Our cultivation facility, which has everything from the seeds to the dispensing location with the pharmacist and pharmacy technicians in one location, is in Portsmouth, and it should be coming online in a month or so. We're definitely going to be open before the end of 2020. And so we'll be open there. And then because of the great work done by our legislative advocates, Jen Michelle and a number of patients, we'll have 5 additional satellite dispensing locations that we'll be able to open up throughout the region. We're still waiting on information about that, which will be coming. We're waiting for regulations from the Board of Pharmacy, which brings me to the other point. The medical cannabis program as it currently exists in Virginia is nowhere near as robust as it needs to be. And we face daily struggles trying to navigate the regulatory environment. Patients are constantly trying to figure out who is a doctor who can write me my certification, and what even is a certification. And then you have to register. So let me take a second to just talk about like, what is the process of becoming a medical cannabis patient? I'll do this quick and dirty. And the first thing I'm gonna say is go to the Virginia Normal website, and there is an abundance of resources there that will walk you through this entire process step by step, including screenshots of the registration setup. But the first thing you have to do in order to become a medical cannabis patient is to find a provider who will write you a medical cannabis certification. This is kind of like getting a prescription, but because this isn't like an FDA controlled drug and all of those things, it's a certification. So first you have to find a provider. The Virginia Normal list has Virginia Normal has on their website a list of all of the providers as far as we know. You should definitely call ahead as part of your appointment. There are also some folks who specialize in writing the cannabis certifications. So if you've talked to your primary care provider and they write you a letter or give you some documentation of your diagnosis, you can take that to one of these cannabis certifying facilities in order to finish your process and get your card written. Because one of the things we face is a lot of doctors who are associated with hospital systems are not allowed to participate as a cannabis certifying provider because of their hospital policies, or because they haven't been able to work things out with their own insurance, malpractice insurance providers and the folks who cover their practices and things like that. And then some folks are just uninformed and don't realize that medical cannabis is actually legal. But the first step is to go make that appointment to go see a provider. It doesn't have to be a physician. It has to be somebody who's certified to prescribe and has registered with the Board of Pharmacy. The next step is then to complete your registration. Once you have that certification in hand, you have to complete that registration at the Board of Pharmacy website, which is counterintuitive. It's not easy to find, but again, the Virginia Normal website, which Jen Marcel is dropping into the chat right now, has a guide for how to navigate that. The registration process will cost $50 for the patient, and if you have, if you're, the guardian of a minor, or somebody else, the registered agent you have to register in order to pick up medication on behalf of somebody else. That registration is $25. So once you have completed that registration process, it takes about anywhere from kind of 7 to 14 days for your card to arrive in the mail. And then when you first go to a dispensary, you must, and I have to reiterate this, you must bring both your medical card and the physical copy of the certification with you for your first visit to a dispensary. It is vital that we have both of those documents in order to verify you in the system, and we have to see both of them in order to provide you your medication in that transaction. For anybody who has already done this process when it was first made available, what's most important is the Board of Pharmacy has been smart and has extended any previously issued medical card because dispensing locations didn't open at the end of 2019 like everyone had hoped. And then many of us faced additional delays with the pandemic impacting construction and supplies and all types of stuff and hiring. So folks, we're all behind, and we're all as sad about it as patients are. Once the cards have been extended, expiration dates have been extended, but your provider certification must have been issued within the last 12 months. And the provider certification has to be renewed every 12 months, regardless of what the date is on your card. So that's just another key point. And then once you come in, it's the one other thing to know is right now, and I'm sorry, I feel like I'm describing a lot of the hurdles that we're facing, but I want folks to be prepared for what the experience is right now, even though we're advocating for change. Only the person with the card can enter the facility. So if you have a child, you have to leave them in the car or not bring them with you. If you are, and we have literally seen this happen in Dharma out in Bristol.
And don't leave them in the car.
Right, you're right. Don't leave them in the car. Not a parent, so
it's okay.
don't take my parenting advice. But we have had folks come to Dharma out in Bristol who have seen eye problems, and they have had to leave their assistants and caretakers outside of the facility and be assisted by pharmacy technicians inside. We are working right now. We have raised this issue with the Board of Pharmacy. We are asking for ways to change and improve this process and allow more people to enter our facilities. And we're just waiting for guidance on that and several other regulatory reforms. So I'll stop there because I want to make sure I don't stop any other speakers.
No, you're fine.
But happy to help answer questions as we get further down the line.
Those are the other dispensaries. While you spoke about dispensaries, I wanted to show that real quick.
Yeah, thank you for that, Antoine. The state, when they issued the RFA,
I thought that one box that was here was that, but it was missing the poles.
Oh. They divided the state into 5 regions. And so though there's one kind of facility or processor per region, you can go to any region to acquire your medication. And you do have to go in person for your first visit, but I believe Dharma just brought delivery online. G-Leaf is probably going to open next, and I think Columbia Care will be a few weeks behind G-Leaf.
So one of the things that we have, Virginia, we love you, but you guys have some things, just from what we see in other different states, and God bless the Board of Pharmacy. But there are some really strong medical states that can maybe give advice or give some maybe suggestions and guidelines that can help to streamline the process to make it a little more easier. My first thing when I see that map is the fact that you have 5 areas and you have one provider for each area. To me, it makes me pause, like eyebrow up, right, Jen? So it's almost, and God bless. So if anyone's if you're listening, just know that it's just, just for me, it's kind of monopolistic. It's like, hey, we're going to have one provider that's going to have one area. And so, and no shade against Dharma or Columbia Care or any of the other, operators or multi-state operators that are there. But the people that are on this, that are members and that are a part of M4MM, they do want to understand from an economic opportunity how they can participate. They do want to be able to service their community. And to be honest with you, when you have one area, one region, and you're given only 5 locations for a dispensary, and you have a population of hundreds of thousands of people, it just seems like it's not enough, and that there should be ways to expand that out. So, and we'll talk more about that. I want to make sure that we recognize our next guest, and then we're going to recognize after our next guest introduces herself, and she's not talking yet because she's a powerhouse, but we have next our guest speaker for tonight. We have Ms. Dashita Dawson. She's here with us. Dashita, we're just doing a round of intros of some of the key people that we have as our guests for tonight. Introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and kind of how you got brought into cannabis.
Hey everyone. Thank you so much, Roz. Thank you, Antoine. Thank you so much for joining, letting me join you guys. I apologize for being late. I'm still on West Coast timing in terms of the workday, and so ran out of a last meeting to join you guys. So yes, I'm Dashita Dawson, and I hope you guys can hear me. My internet sometimes acts full, so I'll go to off the picture if I need to. But I'm Dashita Dawson, also known as the Weed Head. I'm a cannabis advocate, executive, author and now regulator in the legal space. My day job, which is what I was just running off of, is as the City of Portland, Oregon's head of cannabis for the legal market, both on the adult use and medical side as well. I oversee both the regulatory and compliance aspects, anything that you can imagine that you'd have to go through within a municipality for getting a license and staying in compliance with that license. But I also oversee community engagement, cannabis competency inside and outside of the city, as well as equity. I'm very excited to be joining you guys. I started my career in cannabis, if you will, now going on 5 years. I used to be the chief strategy officer for Minorities for Medical Marijuana, and really got excited about seeing Roz in 2016. This is like our 4-year anniversary, Roz. It's our anniversary. But I got to see her speak during a Thanksgiving weekend in Orlando, and it was powerful, largely because she was talking from a patient perspective. I myself am a cannabis patient as well, openly so. And one of the things that I've been kind of charged with is using my science background and business capabilities to better, to better the actual legal market on the inside and the outside through community education, but more than anything else, legislative support and education. I think I moved to the government side after working with a lot of MSOs with a consulting firm that me and my sister started, MJM Strategy. And while we were the first at a lot of Black and Brown conferences and media outlets, it was really clear that when we joined a lot of Black leaders to talk to the Congressional Black Caucus, that was where the biggest need was. And from that point on, I've pretty much been working with either municipalities or legislators, lawmakers, and law enforcers or Native American tribes to help them better educate themselves as they figure out how to govern and regulate. And so it made sense when Portland came calling to take that experience and to move it over there. And that's what I've been doing for the last 6 months, and happy to share with you guys any insights that I have. I got something for y'all later, but that is my quick and dirty.
And She Blaze.
Man,
Oh, yes. I am a co-host of She Blaze. I can't even take credit for that. My baby sister, she is the creator and executive director. Executive producer. I do not do anything but show up as a co-host as talent. She does everything because honestly, I don't know I would have the time, but that is also her baby. But thank you for the shout out. She Blazes every Saturday. Yes.
Y'all be dropping the nuggets on that every Saturday. I'll be watching.
If you guys want to catch She Blazes on M4MM, our Facebook page every Saturday, make sure you catch it. So thank you, Deshita, and just hold tight, Jen, Deshita. I gotta pronounce it right. Oh gosh, pronounce your name one more time. Nagist.
Rhymes with biggest, niggest.
Niggas, got it. Biggest niggas, got it. Thank you so much.
I love that. Hey girl.
Yes, I know. You know, niggas, thank you so much. So you guys sit tight for a second. Before we go on any further, I want to make sure, for those that are watching us live on Facebook, we have a room full of Virginians that are on our Zoom. They're actually live with us in our studio, in our broadcast studio. And I know that we have some folks that are with some of our area chambers. And Antoine made a very intentional connection and to get connected with our area chamber of commerce, because it's critical when we talk about social equity and from a business entrepreneurship ownership perspective, that we involve and have conversation and partner with these entities who have these entrepreneurs and these business owners who want to be a part of the regulated cannabis industry, either touching plant or not touching plant. So if we have any of our executive directors or presidents, or if you're standing in for one of a chamber, come on board. Just come out and introduce yourself and tell us about your chamber and where you're located.
Good evening.
Hey, good evening, everyone. It's Dr. Johnny Garcia. I'm the president and CEO of the Hispanic Chamber of Coastal Virginia. So we handle minority-owned businesses, specifically Hispanic-owned businesses in the 757 along coastal Virginia in the Eastern Shore. Obviously, right now is an important time for small businesses and Hispanic-owned businesses in recovery. So we extend our relationships, not only to support businesses, but also to support the community.
Yes.
And it's kind of relevant for me as a business owner myself. I'm the founder of, co-founder of Cativa CBD, one of the largest CBD businesses here in the region, if you haven't heard about us. But it's extremely important as far as the creation of jobs around the cannabis business, minority owned and others as well. And I have my counterpart, Julian Baena, who's also on the phone, on the video call as well. So appreciate you guys having us on today.
No, we're so happy to have you, Johnny, and we want to learn more about your CBD business, but it's very intentional that Antoine has been making a connection. It's important because those businesses that are a part of your chamber, they too are wanting to be in the ecosystem of cannabis, of the regulated market. And let's just even and if we're even thinking about the adult use side, what does that look like from a touching plant and even non-touching plant ancillary perspective? So thank you for being with us tonight.
Hi, good evening, everybody.
You want to introduce yourself?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Julian Baena. I am the treasurer for the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of Coastal Virginia. And I'm here to support, the organization, the mission, and also the president of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and make sure that we get our community involved and provide them the resources that they need to be educated and understand what this means for Virginia and our local community. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Julian joined us. So for you guys who don't know, we did a stakeholder meeting. So before we planned this meeting, we all kind of got together and said, hey, we need to be working together. And Julian was a part of that initial conversation. So we're so happy to have you back on tonight with us, Julian. Johnny, he represented the organization very well. And it's just really key for us to start out with this strong type of partnership. So going back now, anybody else, any other chambers, anyone else that we need to recognize right quick? All right.
Well, I just want to say, Roz.
Go for it.
Just want to say, definitely Julian has been instrumental in helping me getting some of the emails of the other chambers, the Indian chamber, the Asian chamber. Definitely, I will keep them on our email distribution for our next ones. And definitely, if anyone out there knows of some of their members, we definitely want to invite them to it. For the Black Chamber of Commerce, some of you are on that. I actually have been working with the Black brand, the Black Chamber, for the past 2 years. So I'm gonna remove this hat and tell you about it. So Black brand is the regional Black Chamber of Commerce here inside the state of Virginia on the southern side. Definitely working towards helping Black businesses and African-American businesses get access to different opportunities, access to funding, to grants. Definitely they have been instrumental in the CARE Act and the funding that came down the pipeline from the state of Virginia and the government, and distributing that with the help of LISC as well as Urban League. And definitely I think yesterday or the day before, she said there was 80-something applications that came through that got approved, and it was at least 60-something applications will be getting checks within the next few weeks. I think they got their notice yesterday just from that CARE Act and everything, and basically cutting back some of those barriers that a lot of our Black and brown organizations and businesses are not able to get. Definitely, it was definitely instrumental in helping those businesses that probably was about to close. So definitely, Black brand has been instrumental in that. And definitely, it's coming out right now, Black Diamond Weekend, later on this month. That's the biggest thing that's coming up each year, and it's going digital. Cox Communications, one of the biggest sponsors, and ODU sponsoring. And so that'll be online. Definitely tickets out there. I actually bought VIP ticket again tonight. But so it's gonna be awesome. Definitely with Black brand doing that. I am one of the nominees for Unsung Hero. I took my horn. Sorry, I need to go. But so
you are our unsung hero. We appreciate you. Yep, absolutely.
All the chambers are welcome, and definitely everybody out there, if you're a part of the chamber, definitely come back. We want to make sure this Roz is going to talk more about social equity and how we can get involved in social equity and what it means, the definition. That's what I want us to talk about too.
So let's go into it. Let's talk about the fact that, you know, we have the state of Virginia that has a and Jen, maybe you can explain. Let's go back to when we looked at that map. You know what, Antoine, show that map again of the state of Virginia and how it's divvied up in regards to those license holders or what have you. So when that law, and again, we're new to the state of Virginia, M4MM, so we were not around when the policy making was happening. You know, we unfortunately didn't have a presence there in Virginia. But Jen, maybe you can share, and of course after that, anyone else share a little bit about you know, the fact that we have a vertical business model in Virginia and what that means. And the fact that there wasn't a conversation about social equity. I don't think that has been a part of the conversation initially in the medical program there.
Yeah, certainly it was in the conversation that the legislature at the time was interested in entertaining. So this map is showing you what are health service areas. And these health service areas already exist as part of the state's overall regulatory structure from Virginia Department of Health. So these aren't specific, these weren't created for the medical cannabis program. The state already had these health service areas, and each one of them has about 1.5 to nearly 2.5 million people. The tiniest one at the top, the Northern Virginia area, has the most people with just below 2.5 million. And then, you know, you can kind of see the geographically larger areas that have just a slightly lower population overall. So that's kind of how those come to be. And at the time, the legislature, the House and the Senate, were controlled by a Republican majority, and they were much less interested in advancing these bills than the current legislature is. Now, granted, everyone is voting for our medical cannabis bills, you know, in support unanimously now, so it's a much different landscape. But
yes,
back in 2015, they weren't as interested in, you know, making this available, let alone accessible. And so when we sort of tied their arms behind their backs and made them say, okay, they said, sure, and we're going to do this based on the existing health service areas, and we'll just do, to start, one license per HSA. That's really how we ended up.
So there was
no
conversation about social equity, about a tiered type of system, you know, just because I don't know. I mean, your perspective is definitely one that's needed for us, because it's critical, because we need to know the foundation of where the state was in order to try to figure out how do we go back. I mean, I know it's tough to go back and to try to fix what didn't happen on the front end, but would love to, you know, get your perspective and the kind of the vibe at the time.
Yeah, so they didn't want to let us do this at all, let alone on a large scale. And so there was this sort of idea put forth by Board of Pharmacy that if we required vertical integration for these licenses, then they could easily dismantle it if the federal government suddenly decided to ignore the Rohrabacher-Farr amendment and come after medical cannabis operations in states, which was preposterous in 2016 and 2017 when we were discussing this, and it's incredibly laughable now. Yep. But that was the reasoning at the time, was that, no, we got to tightly control this, and also, you know, the marijuana is a very dangerous Schedule I drug, and so you have to limit diversion and keep it tightly under control. That all of this nonsense is how we ended up with this tightly controlled vertical model that is essentially a state-sanctioned oligopoly. So how are we moving away from that? Well, we see the first sort of step, tiny little step away from that with legislation that we passed in 2020 that allows these existing licensees to have an additional 5 retail facilities within the health service area that they're licensed. And they do not have to be the sole owners of their retail establishments. So there is the opportunity for the existing licensees, if they are interested in this, to bring in new participants at the retail level. Doesn't mean they will, but it means they can.
Right.
And then how do we shape the conversation going forward? Well, I think that Nigus and I have kind of cornered the market on that, that conversation, and have really been dominating it within the state's medical cannabis work group, which the both of us were appointed to, and to the state's Virginia marijuana legalization work group that we both were appointed to. Not to mention that in the JLARC study, we were very specific in our intention to include language that required a look at how an adult use model could be equitable and accessible from a business opportunity for, most importantly, those who have been disproportionately affected by the epic failure that is marijuana prohibition in Virginia.
Sure. Yeah, sure. That's a great foundation of how it came together. And explain to everyone, and then and Nigus, I want you to Nigus, I want you to be able to share your thought too. But can you share, Jen, the difference between vertical and horizontal business model and what that means? So when you speak about those HSA areas, that operator, their responsibility consists of what?
So our licensees are licensed to do everything seed to sale. So they cultivate the plants, they extract the oils from the plants, they formulate the products, they dispense the products, and they're able to deliver the products as well, all from this single license. Yeah. Whereas what we will see, not only as we move forward with the medical program, but what we will see from the get-go in our adult use program is a tiered license structure where cultivation, where extraction or production, where retail, and even things like delivery and hospitality may all be licensed individually.
Yes.
And we may also allow for a continuation of vertical licenses if one entity wants to own multiple licenses, wants to control their product from seed to sale. This is reasonable to allow it since we require it right now, but it's not going to be the mandate going forward, especially not with an adult use program as we roll that out.
Right. Nigus, your thoughts on this in regards to, you work with Columbia Care, which is a multi-state operator. And one point that Jen mentioned, like, even though you do have the capability of having those 5 licenses and having partnerships with equity owners who are different people outside of the corporation, don't you think if it's not something that's made either a part of regulation or of having that license, or if there's not some type of push to make a entity do that we might be hard pressed to see some of the multi-state operators really venture out and form partnerships, and basically, the businesses that are with the chambers and the business owners that are out there, they want an opportunity to participate in this from an economic perspective. Your thoughts?
So I think first and foremost, I don't think anyone's participation should be contingent upon their ability to find an MSO to partner with, right? Like, that's the other part, is it shouldn't be this tightly controlled. And so we have supported expanding the licenses for the medical program as well. And actually in this legislative session, we're told by administration, we had legislators ready to carry those bills. And I apologize for the cat. He's going to do what he needs to do. So, so we have advocated for additional licenses, but we're told during session this year that the administration didn't want any new licenses to be issued until the existing ones were fully operational and open. we are also all still waiting for the regulations. So we still don't actually know what the process is going to be for opening those satellite dispensaries.
Wow.
So that's going to be one of the hangups for that part of the expansion. We're expecting them and an application and some of that instruction in like Q1 of 2021. Now, when it comes to the broader equity in the future of the industry, one of the first things we said when the JLARC interview happened with the medical processors, our first position was like, you have to stop vertical integration. It should be permitted, but not required. And I say permitted, but not required for a reason. Like, obviously there's the existing operators who had to comply with the rules and regulations that were in place. And I just want to acknowledge something that Jen Michelle had said earlier in their remarks around as exciting as this current moment is in Virginia, it is really important to remember just how Republican and how conservative we were just even 18 months ago.
Wow.
And we have clawed our way, as somebody who has come from the electoral background in Virginia politics, we have clawed our way to a point where we have enough of a consensus that we can have this conversation and have the announcements in the week that we are having right now. And so there are a lot of things that did not happen in the establishment of this medical program. And that's because of who was in power and what conversations they were willing to have.
Gotcha.
Because other folks have been raising equity every step of the way and trying to get something to move on all of this. So when it comes to the future, we said vertical integration should be permitted but not required for two reasons. One, because we had to comply with the laws that were built when we applied for our licenses. But two, and I think this is another aspect to remember, is when you have a cannabis industry created, people are going to come in at all different levels. And you're going to have a lot of folks who are going to come in at like a small level because it's lower capital and it's a place where they can enter. But a successful business will grow. And somebody might start out having owned a dispensary, and they might end up owning a few dispensaries, and then they might realize they want to have their own branded product, and they might get into the cultivation game, or they might get into processing and manufacturing. And I think it's important that folks have the ability to have the size and scale of business that they choose to have as a business owner. And that's where I think being able to set up a structure where, again, it's permitted but not required is both fair to us, the medical operators, and the rules that they had to comply with, but is also fair for the future of this industry and where future entrepreneurs might choose to take their business.
Sure.
So that on that part, when it comes to the broader equity question, one point that I just want to close on is earlier today we had the final work group meeting for a group on the medical cannabis program, and a few folks listened in. And I think there was something that's also really important to remember is like we were having a conversation in that work group about removing barriers to physician, like prescriber certifications. And we're talking about the different ways that patients interact with doctors and how it can be hard and how do we improve telehealth access and things like that. And in talking about how do we increase patient access to medical professionals, our Board of Pharmacy regulator in a comment processing that compared that to making this a recreational program, which is absurd that in a conversation about increasing health access, that becomes something so overblown. But that is one of the challenges we face is that we have folks who really think that medical is just a backdoor to adult use. And we see that in the conversations because we're trying to advocate to be able to sell botanical products. We can only sell highly processed oil-derived products. And tablets are really important for some patients, but for other patients, the whole flower and all of the minor cannabinoids that are in that are key for their therapeutic benefit. And we're having a lot of difficulty educating our regulators and legislators and other key decision makers about the importance of this and that flower has medical benefit too. Flower is not only for adult use. Mm-hmm. And so I think that mindset and like the amount of education is a really important part for how we advocate for cannabis business opportunities and patient opportunity and consumer safety and things like that, because there are a lot of misconceptions after 100 years of the failed war on drugs. We got a lot of corrective education that we have to do.
Yeah, I think we sometimes forget that even when we talk about equity, it's not just social equity from an economic perspective. Social equity is health equity and having access to reducing barriers to that physician, to that process. So you guys are telling me, Jen Michelle and Niggas, that basically your regulator for the state of Virginia is what, the Board of Pharmacy? Is that how it's kind of the structure, the infrastructure of Virginia? And they are the ones that are creating these rules and regulations as to how this program rolls out?
Yeah, they do have some authority, particularly if we pass a bill that calls for the Board of Pharmacy to promulgate regulations particular to that legislative advance. We try to be incredibly prescriptive now in the legislation that we pass. If we have anything that we want to be sure to control how it rolls out, and not just leave that authority to the regulatory agency. But largely Board of Pharmacy has a lot of power to administer this program the way they interpret the Code of Virginia. Sure.
Which could be, we'll leave that right there. So we'll leave that right there. So guys, one reason we have Ms. Deshita Dawson on, because you're talking about regulatory language, you're talking about how do you manage this. When it comes to the role of the advocate, what things that we should be doing to really reinforce a more equitable industry in our state and in our local municipalities. We want to have Deshita on so that she can really, from her perspective, she's been on the advocacy side as one of those advocates that's rights policy, and now she's a regulator. And so being able to, one, fortify everyone that's on this call with just some aha moments, some aha points, some things to think about, and reinforcing what their role looks like and what we should be doing. So Deshita, can we get you on? Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Did we lose Deshita? Okay.
No, we didn't.
Okay. So Deshita, you got the floor for the next 10, 15 minutes or so. And I sent you over some points I really wanted to kind of, from your perspective, can you you heard from Jen Michelle, you heard from Niggis a little bit about their perspective. You see a little overview about the state of Virginia. And I mean, you and I both can see just right off a rip where social equity can be put on the back burner. There is, you had regulators who were very, very conservative and very protective of the program. And so how do we go back and rewrite some of the wrongs or some of the maybe and get some folks back on board to looking at creating the opportunities for everyone in the state of Virginia with this program, and love to hear your thoughts.
Sure. Well, first of all, it was really great hearing from folks on just their perspective. Not a lot of multi-state operators support non-vertical business growth. So shout out to Columbia Care for keeping it real about what's going to be really good for the market. I wrote down a couple of notes and I'll go off of them because I wanted to make sure that I was kind of keeping it tight, but also, giving as much information. There's a business and government side about why there's an importance of having a strong and robust medical program before moving to adult use. But there's also the patient side. And since I'm a cannabis patient first, I'm going to start on the patient side. And I want to say what I say to every regulator, every legislator, every law enforcer is that cannabis is medicine first and always. So it doesn't matter what usage time period. We all have an endocannabinoid system. And we all, as a result, have some sort of medicinal benefits that happen when we consume cannabis. And that's both on the hemp and the marijuana side. Both are cannabis and they're part of the same genus. And from a molecular standpoint, and, I guess I'll be able to say that because I'm a molecular biologist, they produce the same cannabinoids. They produce the same molecules. The government has created a man-made differentiation with the THC level. It's really important for advocates and community to recognize that they're still within the same genus, though, within the same family.
Did we lose the volume?
Hello?
We lost volume for a minute.
Okay, sorry. My internet. I'm gonna go off my video just for a second so I can make sure I'm still being heard. In If you guys can still hear me, I hope so. So in California, what they did was they focused on those who were almost dying, right? So you get this belief that cannabis is only for hospice or the end of life. But then there's also this idea that there were a lot of advocates that were really focused on it because it was a backdoor to adult use. At no point did they take along the medical professionals. In fact, they kind of leapfrogged them, which are still the same, groups of people that we go to.
We lost you a little bit again.
Did we lose her?
I think we lost her.
Uh-oh. We'll kind of hang on. Sheeta, if you hear us.
I can hear you. I
Okay.
just think I might have to call in because I don't want to mess up the feed, and I don't know what's going on, but I'm guessing it might be the weather outside. But if you can still hear me,
Well, just try again. Keep going.
Okay. And so what I was going to say was that I feel like the government, at least from my experience now working with government and within, they're very aware that there is some sort of medicinal component, but there's a lot of fear. And so they tend to be the least cannabis competent. And believe it or not, the community as a whole, both the business cannabis community and the community of consumers on the legacy side, especially, have more cannabis competency than the people making the laws. And so that's why it's so important for you to understand the history and understand why it's, important for you to stress that this is a, real medicinal properties and real human systems that it impacts and real plant science. And unfortunately for all of us, because of the way it's been scheduled on a federal level, it has been a deterrent for health professionals to want to actually learn about it, other than you need to call social services. I'm a board member for Doctors for Cannabis Regulation. It's the first organization of doctors globally that has supported adult use legalization, primarily because of the belief that the prohibition, racially biased enforcement of prohibition specifically, has caused a huge public health crisis based on the resultant mass incarceration and disinvestment in those communities. These are MDs and DOs and PharmDs, and I'm one of the few non-doctors on the board that are bringing to the table legislative concepts, testimony. We do have a fairly large contingent of doctors across the country that are members, and definitely feel free to reach out. I'll share information with Antoine so that if you want to go and have more conversations with more experienced doctors that have cannabinoid understanding, you'll probably have to go through organizations like Doctors for Cannabis Regulation, because more often than not, you will still know more than your physician. I think Nagis actually said that there was a big hole, right, on them being able to feel comfortable actually providing that recommendation. That is a real deterrent to the growth of a real medical market, because believe it or not, without the biggest advocates for patients, which are generally health professionals, at the table, the government isn't thinking about patient equity or health equity. And those are some of the big equity components in my role now that we are looking at. In Oregon, they rushed into adult use and it completely collapsed the medical program, and there's still a real lack of understanding from the medical community around how cannabis can help. As a result, Oregon has only captured about 2% of its potential medical market. And by that, I mean the people who have had ailments for a long time, like Crohn's or lupus or MS, fibromyalgia, arthritis, that need to go to the doctor and they discuss these things. And we know that cannabis can be helpful. They're not signing up for the medical program. So on the patient side, it really is about that access to a physician who is willing to write the recommendation. And any states that limit what the recommendation can be written for or the qualifying ailments, one, odds are they're not taking into account everything that the endocannabinoid system actually impacts, which is literally everything: sleeping, eating, pooping. Like it really is about how does it balance your whole body. And when it's not working properly, we get things like diabetes and high blood pressure. Anything that's out of balance is actually connected to the endocannabinoid system. So cannabis actually helps medicinally on so much more than most of the qualifying conditions that folks see. And so when they limit that, it makes doctors really nervous because it's not their area. They're not going to write you a recommendation. If they don't see it on the list, then you don't really quite fit into one that is, they're not going to risk their license to write the recommendation. I'll give an example of Oklahoma, which I want everyone to take a look at their medical market because it's thriving in a big way. And I'll move over to why that's important on the business and government side. But basically, they have over 9,000 businesses in a medical market and now nearly 400,000 patients. They've captured 10% of their total state, not just of the people who have ailments that we know of cannabis can actually work for, but the total state. It's more indicative of the legacy usage, right? And what we know is already happening in most markets, because all while medical is being built or adult use markets are being built, we have to remember that there is a legacy supply and demand economy that exists everywhere. So one of the lessons from Oregon is that it's easy to get a patient card, both in the price point, but also the doctors don't have to be so worried about what this list of ailments may be. It really is at their discretion. And that's how the law has been written. And every other piece of medicine, for the most part, is at doctor's discretion or health professionals' discretion. So this is a departure from the way we treat regular medicine. And I think that we've got to, as community and as advocates, we have to actually push for medicinal cannabis to be treated the same way other things are, both in the consumer protection, the quality control, as well as the access capability. Which brings me to the last point where I'm just of the mindset more and more, especially after realizing that during the pandemic, after 16 weeks, when I don't have my medicine, my intestinal tract shuts down. I need to be able to grow this because I should never have to be a slave to whether I can get to a dispensary, even if I have a card. And so when we think about patient equity, it's about accessibility. It's about, for the patient, sustainability for the medicine, because many of us, like myself with early signs of MS, it is an everyday you need to take it, otherwise your body starts to break down. And also for equitability. We want to be able to, also patronize Black and Brown owned establishments. And it may not be the case that they're doing it in a vertical sense. Horizontal tends to work better. So that's on the patient side and why that's so important. But it's just also, and this is probably going to be more compelling to legislators, it's really important on the business and government side. At the end of the day, a lot of these governments see it as a revenue driver. You can tell right away based on the department it puts it in. Even in the medical program, you have places where, yes, they'll have health authority, pharmacy board, but it's still taxation and revenue, right, at the end of the day. And so if they're looking for a strong revenue driver, then you have to look at the market differently, and the dynamics need to be accessibility for the patient. And certainly, and no disrespect to any of the vertically integrated operators, 5 in that region that I saw is not enough to prevent me, if I've already been leveraging a plug for 20 years, where I can have reliability and accessibility. It's definitely not enough for me to go get a card to cross over into the legal market. And so what we found is on the business and government side, when you have a stronger medical program, you get experienced consumers that actually cross over into the adult use market, which means you're starting your market, not just on the strength of what you think your current operators can do, which is often a faulty perspective, but what your consumer demand may actually be. there's a decrease of fear, especially among Black, Indigenous, and Brown Latinx communities. If every time, I worked for Target for a while, if every time one of my consumers left the store with a t-shirt or whatever I was selling and they were targeted by the police, they would not come back to buy from the store. And so from a business standpoint, when your consumers have less fear, they become more likely to shop and more likely to participate. And I tell you, from my time crossing the country and working in markets, there's still fear. I have it myself, even just on the smell. When you have hemp, it's still fear because we're still targeted. There's also increased education. So again, more medical means more health professionals, more advocacy around health elements within cannabis, and more education among consumers to know, hey, I like this, knowing that it's a whole plant. I like that I'm going to get this particular terpene profile. I'm going to buy this brand because they offer that, versus, oh, well, I mean, I think this oil and the pills, the limited things you're giving me is the right thing. It actually really doesn't feel that different from the pharmaceutical challenge, industry's challenge now with opioids, where patients don't know what they're taking really. And with cannabis, we can do something different. And I think it'll be a better performance. So that's the business side. I'll leave you guys with just the last notes that I have now that I've kind of crossed over, if you will, although I do feel I'm an advocate within the government realm. The government belongs to the people. I hate to sound real special, but at the end of the day, one of the things that I had to take as a signature, kind of an oath, is that I'm not going to misappropriate any funds, and that every policy that I try to regulate and implement will be implemented with equity. That might be Oregon, but it really is supposed to be all government. If you look up the definition of social equity, which right now is starting to get bastardized as a word, but if you look it up, it says it's about public policy being equitable and accessible. It's when you go get your license, and if you're hearing impaired, there's another type of test for you, right? It's not just about racial equity. It's also about disabilities and equity there. So when we think about it, I think I want everyone to think broadly, but you can also demand that of your government because it belongs to us. We vote people into role, and then they in turn appoint people in charge of, industries like cannabis. And if they're not doing what is in the best interest of community, then they don't need to be in the job anymore. And I think it sounds easier said than done, but I think our lesson from this last election is that we can galvanize. What's happened even in the state of Virginia is a perfect example. The more active we are, but you can't lose that civic engagement. You have to continue to, bring your cannabis competency as an advocate to your legislator. Give them a chance to learn. I'm not saying fire everybody, but if they're unwilling to budge from the old draconian laws and perspectives around it being a gateway drug, after we have literally Thailand that used to put people to death for having it, now giving it out to all of their patients for free by the government, it tells me that they're just wanting to be stubborn and not wanting to see it for what it is. And maybe they don't need to be in that role. Every advocate has an opportunity to say what they'd like. And in every single market that I've worked for or worked in, if the community doesn't ask for community reinvestment, then it doesn't happen. So if you don't have butts in the seats, as they would say, and people who come out and testify to say, hey, I need this in my community, I need this investment in my community, I need more opportunities to get into this industry, then it won't happen. It will only happen with our voices in it. So I definitely want to encourage your people to continue to stay as advocates. Last but not least, being an advocate also tends to lead to success in the business realm. You are more informed. You know first what the law and the policy is going to look like. You can actually make pivot and or make decisions based on that. But more importantly, you get to advocate for what you need in your business, and trust and believe many of the MSOs are not like some that, we have on this call. Like, the reality is they're advocating to the tune of a couple millions of dollars in lobbying dollars to get what they need. And it isn't always aligned with what the community needs.
It is not always benefiting what our needs are. I mean, Sheila just said, and I want to get everybody primed up. If you have any questions, you want to come online, show your face, have a question. We have our panel. We'll have Jen Michelle here, Niggas here, as well as Deshita. but it's truly important. The reason why we have M4MM Virginia chapter is for you guys to start advocating for what you want in your community. And the partnership that we want to have with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Black Chamber of Commerce, the Asian Chamber of Commerce, is that we collectively have to go to those lawmakers and say, listen, we want to make sure that this industry is more open and diverse for more participation of different folks from different backgrounds. Because if you do the research on the 5 operators that are in your state right now, you know, those operators are not representative of the state of Virginia. And so, you know, from Jen Michelle and Najis, if you don't mind coming back online, just any thoughts on what you heard from Dashida? I don't know if you guys know about Oklahoma. Oklahoma is like the Wild Wild West. They're out there. I mean, it's crazy. So I don't think we have to be an Oklahoma, but we don't have to be. I mean, there's some in between model, and I would love to hear your thoughts from after you heard the commentary from Dashida.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the key things to note about Virginia in particular is the JLARC study and the work group events that happened. The work group reports will come out in, I think, November 30th. We made sure in the work groups, like, we brought in advocates, and equity was talked about at every meeting and every subgroup meeting. There were 3 subgroup meetings on like different pieces of the puzzle, and everything from legal and regulatory, where we talked about expungement, fiscal and structural, where we talked about what are the license structures and ways to increase access, and what type of business support services, you know, wraparound technical services would need to be provided, to public health, where we talked about disproportionate enforcement and how that might persist, and how do you invest in prevention instead of penalization around things like, you know, driving under the influence and youth interventions, and how do we invest in our behavioral health resources instead of putting more money into incarceration. So we have been bringing equity to every step of the conversation and every lens that is being brought up. In the JLARC report, I believe there are at least 2 chapters that talk about equity in the licensing scheme and the industry itself. The first 4 chapters are about the disparities in enforcement and the criminal justice needs. And there's a significant portion, and this is because it was written into the study bills, to study community reinvestment funds, to figure that part out. And I think that part is really important, because we have seen already in New Jersey, where they just passed the ballot referendum, the first bill that came to the floor didn't even talk about equity. There was no discussion of community reinvestment in the first bill that came out.
And for the record, that's why it didn't last for long. So
it has not lasted for long. Thanks.
No, we are working on those type of things. And so you know, recommendations of, you know, you have people on right now who are listening to you guys from Facebook Live to inside of our broadcasting studio right now. Any recommendations that you can give for those advocates and those organizations, for those individuals, of how do we make our voices heard, and how do we make sure that we're asking the right people and making, you know, and putting what we're thinking of what we want, even in layman's term, how do you have that conversation, and what should we be doing?
The first thing I would say is keep following M4MM, because, you know, Roz and Antoine are going to keep pushing out the information, and you need a clearinghouse and places to stay up to date. I'd also recommend signing up for Virginia Normal, because they also do the updates and action alerts too. The other thing to keep in mind is we're entering a first of its kind legislative session. There will be no in-person lobbying. There will be no, you know, you can't have a lobby day the way you used to. So it is more important than ever to email and call your representatives, because they need the counts. They count and keep track. I used to help out on the staff side. They count how many emails they get saying vote for this way or vote in the other way, because they have to know that they're in tune with their constituents. So, like, take the time when somebody tells you you should call or email, take the 3 minutes to do that, because it is really, really going to matter this year in a way that it has never mattered before.
Antoine, you got that? That means we got to do an email marketing campaign. We got to do a call-in campaign. We got
all 30 people on this call and on Zoom. Definitely, I will be inboxing y'all and getting y'all.
And we got to get our messaging together. Jen, Michelle, are you there? Can you hear us?
I am here, but not able to restart my video. If you want to restart it for me.
Oh, really? All right. Well, just any feedback that you have. I don't know how to. I don't have the admin controls. Let me get my admin person. But any feedback from what you heard from Dashita? There you are. Hi. Any feedback? I know she hit on some really important points or what have you, and you in your position and the great work that you've done. Anything that you want to share from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Nigas nailed it. Really, is to stay dialed into the process, and as we are moving into a fully virtual legislative session, we won't be able to host the traditional lobby days that we do normally have, where we take people to the Capitol to meet with their lawmakers face to face and advocate for pending legislation.
Right.
So we will be working through Normal to organize virtual lobby days. I dropped a link in the Facebook live stream that you can go ahead and just click and register for emails from Virginia Normal. That way you'll stay up to date and know exactly how to plug into the different events that we're sure to have. Nigas and I are working on an event coming up in December with TomTom Foundation called Legalize It, The Path to Cannabis Equity in Virginia. This is a virtual mini series of events where we will sit down with members of the legislature and other stakeholders in Virginia to break down not only the JLARC report, but the report from the Virginia Marijuana Legalization Work Group and the Medical Cannabis Work Group, so that really the general public can understand what these reports say and how it can impact them. They'll have a lot of opportunities for question and answer sessions during these panels. And there's a link to register for that right on Virginia Normal's front page at vanormal.org. So head over to the website, subscribe to the emails. And as Antoine mentioned earlier, we do a live every Friday at 4 p.m. If you miss it, you can watch it, watch it on your own time, but we're there live every Friday answering questions. And we love hearing from people, and Antoine's there every week, so it's really great.
We'll make sure we put that on our on the M4MM on our calendar and our website as well. I think it's critical. The correlation or the coordination and connection with sister organizations that are fighting for. I mean, we all have our own like little pocket things that are really important to us, but for us, it means the world that we have a Normal that really sees social equity as being a priority and seeing, you don't even have to say it, but the eyebrow up, and I understand you're like, yeah, we got some work to do. And the fact that we have those allies, it means the world to us. So whatever we can do to make sure that not only are we having these our own conversation, but we want to be a part of the big general conversation as well. The more people that we get to talk about this that doesn't look like us, I think it's the better to get the movement that we need to happen.
One of the things too, Roz, before we go, from Jen, from her Fridays, the beautiful thing last Friday, it was awesome that they were asking questions about Dormer, and she actually, Dormer on the phone. Yeah. I mean, that was the literal connection that you're having right now with people that are on here, has those connections straight to the dispensaries. All those questions. I think it was the website or something, Jen, was messed up or whatever. And right there, he was like, okay, I'm getting on it right now.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, and that's even so for all the business owners that are out here, you're looking at, there's not language currently right now in the medical program that talks about social equity or diversity and inclusion. And that's one thing in Florida that we didn't have the strongest social equity language, but we try to put in some strong social diversity and inclusion. And just be sure that there are two different things, two different conversations. Social equity is about repairing the harm for individuals that have been, that have been disproportionately affected by the war on drugs through economic relief and ownership. Diversity and inclusion is about looking at the industry as a whole and the operators and really making it a priority to be more diverse, more inclusive, from an HR perspective, from a supplier contracting perspective, from an ownership perspective, from the executive level, that hiring, that workforce. We don't want to see Black and brown people only at an entry level position. We want to see those Black and brown faces all throughout the whole entire spectrum of a workforce. And so those are the type of things that we should be focused on. So, you know, we're going to do some work in 2021. And Antoine, I know you want to, first and foremost, do we have any questions? We want to make sure we open up. Anyone here in the broadcast studio, you have a question? Anything that you want to share? You can unmute yourself and ask your question. So will this recording be rebroadcast on your YouTube or some other media platform? Yep, we'll put it on our YouTube and we'll send you guys a link to it. We have it recorded and we'll make sure, I would say within the next 24 to 48 hours, we'll have a YouTube link and you can go and check it out and share it with other people. Thanks, Julian. Any other questions for our speakers?
Hi, this is Carrie Graham in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Hi, Carrie.
Good evening. Yeah, first I want to thank Jen Michelle with VA Normal for inviting me. I am wanted to say thank you for being a part of this group, and I hope to be able to be a part of future meetings. And I really appreciate the fact about the integration part, vertical versus horizontal. We have a multitude of providers that can help anybody in the Southside Hampton Roads area or the state of Virginia. So we're servicing all VA patients for direct provider access.
Okay. Awesome.
And I'm on the list, so I appreciate being a part of your future meetings.
Absolutely.
Put your information in the chat and any links too.
Yep. Yeah. If you have any website, if you guys have a business right now that's supporting the industry, let me make sure, you know, and if you have a question or if you have a comment, please unmute yourself. But let me also, I'll be remiss if I didn't bring this up. You guys have a hemp program in the state of Virginia. If you're not looking at that as an opportunity from a business perspective and understanding what that looks like, we had, what was it? We had Johnny Garcia who mentioned that he has a hemp business, a CBD business that's one of the largest in the state of Virginia. And so one thing about M4MM is that we want to make sure that we remind you that if you're not getting in on the operator side of the medical marijuana industry, but you see, read the tea leaves. Your governor just came out 2 days ago, and said that he's supporting regulated adult use. Now, it may not come next year in 2021. It may be 2022. But just imagine if you had your own CBD line, or if you want to carry CBD products and you had your retail establishment and you learn the business and you learn how to manage the business, if and when adult use comes in and they start looking at, well, who's going to get a dispensary license? How is that going to be delved out or what have you? Imagine you have even a better chance to maybe have that opportunity by already managing and being in the industry, maybe but on the hemp side. So we support you guys. If you want more information about our hemp program, M4MM, we have a program called Sow the Land. Go to our website. It's www.m4mmunited.org. Put that in the chat for me, Antoine. We have hours and hours of webinars that talk about how to buy your seeds, how to do your costing and your forecasting, how to create your business plan, how to create partnerships, how to create co-ops in the hemp, how to do your CBD retailing, how to do white labeling and find white labeling partners. So those are the things I would be remiss if I didn't remind you guys that you have a awesome industry that's very correlated to the medical marijuana program on the hemp side. Yeah. So listen.
And Roz, the one that you actually had produced connected to Woman Grow a few weeks ago, I told people I was on that, and that could have easily been $300 to $400 worth of that knowledge. And I mean the pictures and this just talking about the oils and taking the hemp and rolling the big machines. And she said that liquid that was that big or whatever like that was about $300-400, and it was just so awesome. So it's definitely, if you want to get in the hemp is supposed to be what, $450 million
yes
compared to cannabis. So definitely the business, the medical side.
And Virginia, you guys are babies. So let me tell you guys, if you are out there and if you are like, I got some people creative. We got Derek Norris, Creative Empowerment of Hampton Roads. I'm not quite sure what you do. We got It's We Related LLC with Zaza. If you guys provide education, if you provide like resource, like the ancillary part of the business. And Deshita, I know you're still with us. Deshita, are you there?
Because, yes, I am.
Can you talk about your workbook and how they can find it and how you put this together and just the ancillary side of the industry and how that could be just such a great gateway for entrepreneurs?
Sure. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head on the first thing. If your state is not, really expanding your medical program, but it has a hemp license program, look into it. Hemp competency is cannabis competency is one of the easiest ways, in my opinion, to earn and or build a business while also still learning competency around cannabis and being prepared for when adult use does happen. But to your point, in New Jersey, for example, we reported on She Blaze that a soil company was actually the main company to pay for a lot of the lobbying to help get legalization happening. And that's because one, even though they're not touching the plant, and even though they've been around forever, that when cannabis is legal and companies are able to cultivate at large scale or even at home, soil, for example, and plant nutrients, which is an ancillary supporting business for the industry, also increases in revenue. Additionally, I built my company based on what I did in corporate America. People needed management consulting and strategy and P&L management. So whatever you're doing right now in your day-to-day probably has an applicable field or need in the cannabis space. And I often say it's probably best to look first at crossing over your skills. I wrote the book, How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry, first in 2018, and now on the third edition, really because I felt like contractors, professionals, and entrepreneurs had an opportunity to get into the industry using the ancillary model. In the book, I highlight one of the things about the gold rush that people know but don't really, I think, apply here, which is that ancillary businesses are the ones that did well, the picks and the shovels, if you will. And Levi Strauss still being around in a large, major global denim brand now was founded during that time period. So think about the needs of the industry, be solution oriented. There's everything from delivery mechanisms to the machinery for manufacturing, to generally consulting using accounting or attorney and compliance. The list goes on. If you're plumbing and you specialize in hydroponics, if you know how to use your plumbing skills to help with a build out, those are all ancillary businesses that do well in newly developing industries, cannabis industry specifically.
That's awesome. Listen, guys, our chat room, I put in where Deshita is a book it's on the weedhead.com, correct?
Right now, my best-selling spot is Amazon or Target.com. If you want the ebook, you can go to the weedhead.com/shop for that.
Yep. So go to Amazon. It's How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry. I'm so super proud that Deshita allowed me to be able to share a forward that kind of gives some inspiration when you read it. It's going to give you an opportunity. You guys, you got the solution. It's in your belly, but sometimes you need some prompting. You need someone to ask you questions, or just something to kind of help to move that thought process and the things that are in your mind, move that around a little bit. And the workbook, the How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry, it does that for you. So I want to encourage you guys to go check it out. Go order it for yourself. Keep it. Lay in bed at night. Strategize what your plans are. We got some awesome, look in the chat room right now. Shout out to the Medical Wellness Center of VA with Carrie, and being able to provide for those people that need their medical card, being able to reach out to them. Altumwellness.com, shout out to them. Mommies and Mary Jane, a parent operated network dedicated to the building community enrichment and sustainable wellness opportunities for Canna parents. a very specific niche area that you can really take and grow. And so just congratulations on what you guys are doing. I'm super proud of you. If you're not a member of M4MM, and if you are a startup business, membership is $100 for the year, $100 for the whole entire year, not a month, not every other month, $100 for the year. I encourage you guys to go to the website, become members, get engaged with us, and get engaged with Antoine. Antoine, as we start to wrap up for the night and transition, what are you looking for? What do you need in the next 2 to 3 months? What are you going to be focused on, brother?
So definitely all those people that are in that are saying things in the chat, definitely we're on Facebook Live too. So I'm a whole marketing team. So make sure I go to Facebook Live and put those same things, same links inside the Facebook Live, guys. So do that also. I have an awesome young lady that ain't in here, Chanel, with her awesome new strand. Definitely has graphics and everything. I'm not gonna put her on the spot right now. She already put her one of the names of her businesses in there, but definitely a sneak peek into 2021. I'm gonna have her and several of your other businesses, most likely in February. Definitely coming up with those entrepreneurial businesses, the CBD oil and different ancillary businesses coming up on here all together. So definitely we want to have that. We're definitely looking at a lot of different legislative things. Definitely Roz has put us to the fire here inside Virginia so that we can make sure we connect with Virginia Normal and Jen and everything they're already doing. So definitely I want everybody to follow Virginia Normal, and definitely
right now.
We already
Go
talked
do it
about
right
Hampton
now.
Roads Normal, right? Jen is coming back, right?
So hey,
All
Jen,
right.
what's your IG page?
For Instagram, you can follow Virginia Normal at virginia.normal.
Okay, so virginia.normal.
Because we're gonna have M4MM for Hampton Roads and Virginia, and then we're gonna have working with Virginia Normal Hampton Roads Normal there, and so we definitely want to look at whatever nonprofits that are out there that are cannabis, hemp, medical marijuana, any of the businesses, any of the different organizations, anyone out there, definitely join up with us so that we can actually become basically a powerhouse. So then when Jen calls on us for M4MM, we got the power behind her and supporting her wherever she's going on the Hill and wherever next year. So definitely so we want to make sure we look at for M4MM here in Virginia. I got several people. I have a Facebook group that is private, so definitely inbox me on Facebook and I'll add you to that group so you can get the inside tips and get the right here from Roz and different people that give me that information. Definitely we're looking for someone to help us to be in that business field. So I'm looking for different volunteers to help me find all the businesses. I'm looking for people to help me with the dispensaries, definitely with niggas and making sure that we're in line and making sure we know different things, what's coming our way. Because niggas said it's not just Portsmouth, it's Hampton Roads and other places. So that one dispensary, and then they're gonna have 5 more coming behind them. So definitely that's an opportunity. That's a great relationship. And as we build that relationship, we may not be able to have business with them right now, but now just like with a bank, you create a business, you create a relationship with them. Maybe next year or the year after, you could be having your things right there with Columbia Care, one of the other dispensaries. So definitely we're looking for volunteers to help me with that, with the research. We're looking for volunteers to help us with learning more of the medical part. Definitely, I don't know I was talking about all the cannabinoids and all those, the Sheeta was saying all those words. I don't know all those words yet.
You'll get it. You'll get it.
I need a team to help me with that.
My commitment is that we will start looking at making not only our recommendations, but working with our legislators to get our ask ready. What do we want? And so we got to do that, and we have to be our board chair, Eric Range, always says this: if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So we got to be at the table. We got to be a part of the conversation, right?
Yes. Definitely.
So I want to thank everyone for tonight. Vanessa, please get up our thank you slide, and let's thank everyone for coming tonight. Thank you, Jen Michelle.
Yes,
thank you,
we'll be doing this again next month.
Thank you,
in December.
Yep.
Thank you all for being here. Can't wait to keep working with y'all.
Absolutely. And then how do we get in contact with you, Negus? What's your
I'll throw my IG. I don't that's the only one that I'm really active on. Also I'm very easy to find.
Okay.
Once you spell my name.
You guys make sure to everybody that's on tonight, make sure you go follow Dashita Dawson at Dashita Dawson. She put it in the chat. Dashita, thank you for giving us your time. You are like a powerhouse, working on the West Coast time, being on the East Coast, working on the West Coast time, and then also doing all the things that you do and advocating and just well, you already know how proud I am of you, but we're just so thankful to have you to participate and drop your wisdom and your jewels and gems on us tonight. We really appreciate it. So if you guys are not following Dashita Dawson, please go follow her on Instagram tonight. She should have at least another 60 people follow her tonight. Listen, and if nothing else, follow Antoine. Antoine, put yourself in there in IG. Everybody,
my IG on
put
there.
yourself in there. And
save the chat, everybody. Save this chat if you're here.
All right, guys. We thank you guys so much. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night. Good night. Good night.
Thanks so much, Roz. Good night.
Thank you, Dashita.